Hey everyone, it's a nice Labor Day weekend, Saturday. I'm outside as you see. Um, Nothing unusual there. But, so I've been thinking about doing a video. I know I talk a lot about type 4, and the reason I do is because obviously that's my type, and um, I like to talk from my perspective, and it's the easiest type for me to talk about given myself as the examples. But I know I've touched on unhealthy 4 in the past, but I wanted to think about more going into, when I was reading this, really the deep unhealthy 4, like level 7, 8, and 9. And when I read these, I'm just going to give a brief summary. Okay, so I made a little notes, and basically when 4s are at this level, they pretty much set themselves up for failure. Now, I feel like I have been at definitely level 7. I think I've trickled into some 8 tendencies. I don't think I've necessarily hit level 9. 9 is almost like you're pretty much going to suicide, really at the brink of the end, but I'll get there. So there's a shame that's felt in no self-actualization. And when you're really, a 4 gets really this unhealthy, they realize that their identity is lost because they've not achieved anything. If they have artistic talent, they kind of squandered it. They don't have usually, I mean, when they're at this really dark phase, this really deep, sad, unhealthy phase, they have a hard time holding down a job, if having a job at all. So they don't have any external achievement like, that the 3 has, and it causes even more of a cascading of effect of resentment towards those who have achieved it, also the world for valuing this. And frankly, it's so solipsistic, it's so self-indulgent that, realistically, you can't expect the world to stop for you, and that's sort of like what they're sort of living in, this kind of mire of just self-destruction and self-loathing, I would say. So, like here I write, the world can be shallow. It is shallow. Can't, it's not can be, it is. But, you have to learn how to survive in it. And that's, the self-preservation instincts. I'm going to use some examples of 2 individuals I know, both who are 4s. I believe they're both social, sexual. And in my last video on the enneagram, I discuss how I came to realize that I was social self-pres. And both of these individuals that are social sexual, unhealthy, one is a narcissist. Sorry, my face itches, so I'm sorry if I distract you. It's just my hair and allergens. So one is a narcissist, and one, I believe, has borderline personality disorder. So, but when I read the unhealthy 4, I see both of them in this. So what happens is they realize they have no external kind of thing that separates them. So the suffering 4 then begins to use that suffering as an identity. So it's sort of like, I have suffered so much, I am in misery, and they, especially the social 4, they're sharing this with everyone, but they don't actually want help. They sort of just, they want your pity, and they confuse pity for love. And so because they're so negative, all this negativity, the self-loathing, the inability to help themselves, the unwillingness to help themselves, alienates any healthy people in their lives. Healthy people are pretty much like, fuck it, I don't want to be around this person. And when the 4 is this unhealthy, especially, if that 4 is empathic, it's very easy to attract narcissists because they're desperate for compliments. They desperately want approval from others. guess what? You know what narcissists do when they come into your life? Guess what they do? They love bomb you, and they give you a lot. They shower you with compliments and praise. Very easy to hook that unhealthy 4 into that unhealthy relationship. Quote from the book: when they're at this book, when they're at this unhealthy stage, looking for work or finding a therapist is out of the question. Now, I know 2 individuals who I think they're social sexual. I think their self-preservation instincts are almost non-existent. One doesn't take any concern with his physical health. And I remember, he's a narcissist, and I remember just not hearing from him for 10 years. He just sends a mass email wanting money. And I didn't respond to it. I'm like, no, you didn't even write to me personally, didn't ask me how I'm doing. I haven't heard from you for 10 years, but you want me to give you money? I go to work every day. You think I like doing that? You know, I do what I have to do to get by. It was just the arrogance and sense of, he's not been able to hold a job because he thinks he's above it. This other individual is someone who I think has a borderline personality disorder, and you know, borderline is divided up into classify it into 4 different types. I'm going to put a link to a therapist I follow on YouTube. She's awesome, and she explains it. But this individual, I think, is a waif, the waif borderline personality disorder. So this individual is social sexual 4, borderline personality disorder, and the waif. I mean, literally, like, you know, when you start to get into personality disorders, this is where the enneagram kind of gets kind of shady and gray. Like, you know, is this person capable of integration if they have this level of problems? And this individual has had so much abuse upon her that she's not bothered to help herself. Helping herself is out of the question, but she has no problem sharing her problems and her misery. And she's totally guided by emotional thinking. There's no logic and reason. It's almost like the 5 wing is non-existent. Her 3 wing is non-existent. There's no desire to achieve other than in fantasy. So I'm just going to give some examples from reading through here. So, for example, in my life, as angry, here's what the book says: as angry as they themselves at themselves they are. So there's like a, you know, self-loathing. Unhealthy 4s expressing their anger make it worse. So if they're angry at a romantic interest, for example, unhealthy 4s are so enraged they cannot stand being in the same room with the former beloved, and they hold themselves back from. And this is what happened. I remember in college when I had this unhealthy 7 that I was involved with. It's almost like instinctively I knew to completely withdraw from him. And it's weird. It's like I also have this feeling when I've returned to places I used to live as a child, and like in my youth, because I moved around a lot. And I remember thinking that the town had an arrogance to it, because I was like, if someone from this town sees me, they're going to think I'm still the same as I was then. So I was so concerned with what external perception was. So I was like, you don't know me. I've been through so much, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, when you integrate and you become more healthy as a 4, you don't think about these things. You're like, no, you're comfortable with who you are. You have good boundaries. You're much more integrated to one. You're not guided by your emotions. You don't let these emotions and this sadness define you. And a lot of times I find like 4s will be like, well, I feel this. Does this sound like 4? Like as if they were to have a feeling that's non-4, that's somehow not them. And, you know, that's what 4s, the trap they fall into. And it's like, no, you feel what you feel. You're an individual. You're entitled to feel whatever you want. It doesn't make you not this or that. And it's like, if I don't feel sad all the time, or if I don't feel melancholic, or if I'm not moping around, am I somehow then, I'm just becoming like a sheep in the herd or something like that? No, I mean, when you integrate then to health, you don't feel that. You just sort of like, no, I mean, I'm just here going about my business and I'm not thinking about that. So another thing this book says It often comes as a humiliating shock to fours in therapy or recovery to discover that others have suffered as much as they have, and in some cases, even more. And I've seen sometimes this occur, like there can be this sort of pissing contest between fours as to who suffered more, who's more miserable. Well, I've done this and I've endured more and you haven't endured what I have. And this can happen sometimes with relationships between fours. And you know, honestly, when I have seen these two individuals I'm telling you about, these two very unhealthy fours, when I see them complain about their misery, it ignites in me a kind of resentment. And that's the four thing right there that I'm talking about, is like when a 3 brags or boasts, it's different. It's like, oh, shut up, you know, that'll be annoying in a different way. But that 4 who's just whining about, oh, I want to have, you need to give me money so I can pursue my art, so I can have time. You know what? I'm also an artist and I work full time. So you're not the only one who feels your time is compromised. So I remember having all these sort of like resentment feelings when I got this email. Like, who the hell are you? You think you're the only one who's ever had problems? And then like the other individual doesn't do anything. Like both of them, they don't do anything to help themselves. They just are pity cases. They don't have, and how can you have any self-confidence if you've never had a job? And part of building self-confidence and self-esteem is mastering something practical. The 4 will often, you know, when they're unhealthy, they look down, they snub their noses at something, at anything that's practical. And unfortunately, you have to be practical to live in this world. That is the integration to 1. This acceptance of practicality, okay? Learn how to, you know, stitch something, you know, learn how to paint a house, you know, learn how to cook a recipe, you know, something that isn't so dreamy. Get out of that and put yourself into real world accomplishment, being in your body. That's where the transition comes. Again, nothing wrong with fantasizing, nothing wrong. Creativity is a great thing. I do it all the time. But when it's so, you're using these emotions so much to define you, you're going to inhibit yourself. You'll never get past who you could be because you're using so much of this as your identity. And that's what I'm talking about here. And now, unhealthy 4s are still self-aware, and they realize that they are depressed and on the verge of becoming even more depressed. They know, this is, remember I said in my video, I said 4s really don't want to be depressed. Melancholy is not depression. This is depression. This is bad. This is unproductive. But once you're there, it's very hard to get out of it. So they wallow in it. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I don't have any accomplishments, so I'm going to tell you how much I've suffered. Then that'll give me, that's my last resort to getting you, giving me this specialness. So they know that with only the greatest difficulty will they be able to keep themselves from going under emotionally. And the inner light is going out, one which they fear may never be rekindled. So it's like basically a 4 is totally beginning to wither. It's like this eternal withering that's under they're going through. And then here, it's funny, then a paragraph later, they actually use the word withering, which is, when I read the paragraph above, I said, oh yeah, that's a kind of withering. And then the enneagram, the next page right here, or next paragraph says, oh, it's a withering, self-consuming hatred. I was like, oh, that's what's funny about when you read about this. You're like, I get these ideas and words pop in my head, and then the next paragraph they use the word I'm thinking about. So at this level, they don't have self-confidence. They're overwhelmed with shame, and as I said, you know, you can't acquire any confidence if you've never mastered anything practical in the world. As trite as that sounds, as trite as, oh, I'm not going to do that, it's practical, you know, it's the reality. And the truth is we live in a world with a lot of people, and the world is, especially the United States, very three-driven. Western culture tends to be very three-driven. I don't like it either. You know, I'm the type, you know, I hear threes yapping about wanting degrees and this and that, and they want achievement, and I always want to say, you know, but what really drives you? What's making you happy? What's your purpose? And, I mean, I get that, but unfortunately, you know, to fit into the world, you have to learn to adjust to that. You have to go to that three-wing. I don't like doing it. Honestly, it is painful for me, but in moments of desperation, like when I had to find a job, I tapped into that three-wing. Like, I went on YouTube, and I had a job interview, and it's the company where I work now. Went on YouTube, found a site that was giving tips on job interviews. So I had to learn how to answer questions like, what are you going to be doing in 5 years, and blah, blah, blah. And of course I don't like answering these things. I'm a free spirit. I don't like to sit here and define myself. But I had to think of something. I had to give an answer that on the inside I'm going, this is canned, but do I want this job? So I had to do it. And then ultimately I got the job, and I'm still working there now. It's very hard. It can be very difficult to do that. But basically, when they're at this level, life is too painful. The world is too painful. And then suicide becomes sort of their last form of control. You know, and it's kind of a way to like get back at everyone. Well, you know, you never understood me, and I'm just going to kill myself now, and won't you feel guilty? And so this, you know, both these individuals, I think they are social sexual, and I want to learn more about the stackings, and if anyone has any comments with regards to what's the social sexual, because I thought maybe that was what I was, but now I really do realize that my self-preservation will kick in. Like, I'm like, no, I'm not going to let myself get to that point. And in recent videos, I've spoken about how, you know, I've been close to the 2 point. And going to 2 in some ways because of this COVID shit, and so sometimes I've been feeling sentimental. I've watched a lot more films that kind of involve children and childlike perspectives, and it just to bring me comfort. Also, just chit-chatting with people about their families, and this is more of a 2 thing. So in that sense, I mean, that's a good aspect of 2, but I also have felt in the past wanting some compliments, but then I catch myself and I'm like, okay, stop doing that. But when I read this unhealthy 4 again and reminded myself, I realized I feel much stronger, much more towards 1 than I realized. When I read that, I'm not there, but I feel like, okay, if I didn't have this control, I could go there. If I wasn't like focused on knowing myself and working on myself. I mean, it's a process. It takes effort. You know, there's a line from an Ozu film, I think it's Late Spring, and a father is telling his daughter, he says, happiness takes work. It takes work to be happy. You know, it doesn't just come naturally and easily for some people. Maybe to some people it does. But it you know, to say it takes work is true. And anyway, maybe this video will need a second part, but I just find myself on a personal level when I see people who use suffering as their identity and use this suffering as a way to get attention, makes me cringe. It's like, it's a different kind of cringing than the smarmy 3 who's a used car salesman or something. That's annoying. But this just like really, it like angers me, because I'm like, because there's that sort of pissing contest that goes on. You think you've suffered? You try being me, and you know, and so that's where I have to learn to like sort of, nope, shut myself off to this. So this video might need another part, but I just wanted to get that out there. The whole falling in love with suffering and all this, you know, really, it's a choice. Do you want to spend your time like that? Probably you don't really want it, but if you spend it all in the dream, you know, you can't actually achieve. You can't actually live it if you're always in the dream. So sometimes what's really hard for fours to take is sometimes having to let go of the dream. They don't like that, in order to move on and survive. So, okay, that's all I got. I'll probably follow up on this. Take care.